Kamala Harris lost the presidential election. The Democratic Party lost control of the United States Senate, and when all the remaining races have been called, in all likelihood, it will also have lost its chance to take control of the United States House of Representatives. Or did it? Because what if that's not what happened? What if Kamala Harris and the Democrats didn't actually lose this election? What if this election was stolen from them by a massive nationwide conspiracy of voter fraud that canceled and threw out and negated millions, maybe even tens of millions of Democratic votes, votes that would have carried Kamala Harris to the White House instead of Donald Trump? Is such a thing possible? I mean, yeah, I guess technically it's possible. Is that what happened? Yeah, no, probably not. Yesterday I put up a video where I talked about incredulity. And there's a lot of incredulity floating around following the result of the presidential election, but it's not just incredulity. There's also a lot of denial. And it's denial from some people on our side. It doesn't seem to be a lot of people, but there is a noticeable number of folks on our side, folks who voted for Harris, folks who voted for the Democrats, generally speaking, in this election, who are not happy about the election result and are saying, you know what, she didn't actually lose. It was stolen. And I just want to make it clear right now. I am not against recounts. I am not against investigating irregularities in the votes. I think all Democratic candidates, up to and including Kamala Harris, should call for recounts where they think it's appropriate, where they are legally entitled to them. I think every single vote should be counted. I think all avenues to verify the result of the election that are legally available should be pursued and should be exhausted. And all irregularities and instances of potential fraud should be investigated as thoroughly and as quickly as possible. I believe all of that. But, and I know this may be difficult for some of you to hear, our side getting fewer votes than we expected to get is not that kind of irregularity. Now, if it's our side got fewer votes than we expected because, and after that, because there is something suspicious, something potentially nefarious, something illegal, then yes, of course, that demands an investigation and that should be investigated. But is that where we're at? I mean, some people think so. I've seen all across social media quite a few anecdotal reports of voters in swing states like Pennsylvania, like Wisconsin, like Michigan, who voted by mail or who voted on maybe a provisional ballot. And you can check your ballot status online, and they've checked their ballot status online, and it still says, like, up until election day and even after election day, it said that their ballot had not been counted yet, that their ballot had been rejected for some apparently unjustified reason. And again, just like I said with Democratic candidates pursuing recounts and pursuing methods to verify the result, if you are a voter in that situation and your vote doesn't seem like it was counted and it should have been, absolutely follow that up. Make sure that your vote is counted, and people who are in charge of elections in all of these districts, they should make sure that all voters who have an opportunity to cure an uncounted ballot should be given that opportunity right up until whenever the deadline is, if it hasn't passed yet, that every single vote should be counted. Every single vote should be counted. And I'm not for a moment suggesting otherwise, but are there enough of those instances of people's votes being miscounted or being uncounted wrongfully? Are there enough examples of that from all of the swing states, from all over the country, to overturn the result and to make Donald Trump no longer the president-elect? I don't think so. Are there enough examples of that to suggest that there was some kind of massive nationwide voter fraud effort to steal the election for Donald Trump? Again, I don't think so. But examples like that of votes going uncounted that should apparently have been counted, those are not the only reason why some people believe that the election was stolen, that Trump cheated or something like that. There's also the fact that in many districts, in many states, Democrats won or performed very strongly, even overperformed what the polling suggested they would further down the ballot. Like Democrats won local races and state races, Democrats won in the congressional races, even Democrats won in the United States Senate races. But Trump won at the presidential level, and there are many folks on our side that are just refusing to accept that that is possible, that are saying, no, that's not the way that should go. Why would somebody vote for Democrats all the way down the ballot and then suddenly vote for Trump on the presidential election? That doesn't make any sense. Why would that happen? And all I can tell you is, it doesn't make any sense to me either, but it happens all the time. People do that. It doesn't make rational sense to me. It seems to me that to do that, to split your ticket in that way, to vote for Democrats further down the ballot, but then to not vote for the Democratic candidate for president, that is an incredibly asinine thing to do. But people do it. People do it. I wish they wouldn't. I don't think it's a good thing to do, ever. But people do it. So the fact that a lot of people apparently did that is not evidence that the election was stolen, is not evidence that those ballots were somehow manipulated or fucked with. So that all of those people, they really voted for Harris, but the voting machines were hacked and it changed the result to make it look like they voted for Trump. Occam's razor, folks. Occam's razor. The simplest explanation that accounts for the observed facts is usually the correct one. You do not need to assume the kind of massive nationwide voter fraud effort that some of you are imagining to account for the observed result. It's far more likely that a bunch of people had their heads up their asses and voted a split ticket. When all of the votes have been counted, and the last time I checked, around 98% of all the votes nationwide had been counted, so we're not quite there yet, but we're almost there, and it looks extremely likely that when all of the votes have been counted, Vice President Kamala Harris will have received somewhere around 9 million or 10 million fewer votes than Joe Biden did in 2020. And that sucks. And that makes me angry. Anyone who voted for Biden last time and didn't vote for Harris this time, you are without excuse. I'm sure you have lots of reasons why you did it. I'm sure you have lots of reasons that to you seem like good reasons why you voted for Biden last time, but you didn't vote for Harris this time. This time, instead of voting for Harris, maybe you voted for Trump. Maybe you voted for some third-party candidate. Maybe you left the presidential line blank on your ballot and voted down ballot but didn't vote for anybody for president. Or maybe you just didn't vote at all. To everybody who did any of those things, you did the wrong thing. You did the wrong thing. And I'm sure you have your reasons, but you don't have any excuses. Shame on every last one of you. But that's what happened. The election wasn't stolen. Elon Musk didn't use Starlink to hack the voting machines. None of the other straw-grasping conspiracy theories that I've seen being proposed by certain people on social media happened either. If evidence to the contrary is discovered, if it turns out I'm wrong about this and there's an investigation and it turns out, holy shit, the election was stolen, all of those tens of millions of votes that look like they disappeared from, compared to 2020. It turns out they were there and they should have been counted and they weren't. If it turns out that's what happened, then, hey, great. I mean, not great that it happened, but great that it was discovered. And if it turns out that that's what happened and there's some way to overturn the result and to make Kamala Harris the president-elect instead of Trump, hey, I would be so thrilled if that happened. You have no idea. I would be so happy if that happened. But is there a single reason at this time to realistically expect that that will happen or to believe that that should happen? No, there isn't. There just isn't. No matter how much you might wish for that, no matter how much you might hope for that, there just isn't any reason to believe that. Here's what happened. We lost. We lost. We lost the Electoral College. We lost the nationwide popular vote. Now, it wasn't a landslide, despite what Trump and his cronies and his supporters will try to convince you of. It wasn't a landslide. It wasn't a blowout. It wasn't some kind of generational mandate to Trump to do whatever he wants, although he'll try to do that anyway, and he'll certainly claim it as such, but that's not what it was. We lost. We lost not in a landslide, but we lost decisively. And that is an unwelcome reality. It's an unwelcome reality for me. I wish that it were not true. I had hoped very much going into Election Day that it would not be true, but here we are. And if we want to win next time, we have to start here. And we have to accept reality before we can move on and hopefully build to a better result. Because the thing is, I'm not worried about these conspiracy theories. I'm not worried about the election having been stolen from us because I have seen no evidence to suggest that. I'm worried about people on our side who put in work this time. People I've seen in the comments of my videos, and I'm sure that there are many more people sharing similar stories all over social media. People who said, this time, I went out and knocked on doors for Harris or for some other Democratic campaign. And I've never done that before. People who said, this time I phone banked. And I've never done that before. People who said, this time I donated money to the campaign. I've never done that before. People who said, I wrote postcards, like me, who've never done that before. I'm worried about those people who put in that extra work, who tried their best to make this happen. I'm worried about all of them being discouraged by this loss. Or if they believe these conspiracy theories and they believe that the election was stolen, allowing themselves to be discouraged by that and allowing themselves to be convinced that, well, it didn't make any difference anyway. They stole the election from us. Nothing I did mattered. Nothing I did ever would have mattered. It's completely futile to get involved. I'm just not going to get involved next time. That's what I'm afraid of. I'm afraid of this result. Increasing apathy among progressive-minded voters, because that is our greatest enemy. And that is the obstacle that we need to get over, I think, more than any other obstacle. The Democratic Party has been obsessed for decades with trying to flip Republicans. And I have said for years, and I'm by no means the only one, people way, way smarter and way more in the know than I have said this same thing, that trying to flip Republican votes in order to win presidential elections is a waste of fucking time. Democrats cannot convince enough Republicans to vote for them for it to make a difference, in most cases. I have always believed it is a far more fruitful strategy to try and energize and motivate the progressives, the people who already largely agree with us, who don't vote, to get off their asses and vote for our candidates. That would be a far more successful strategy. Convince progressives that they should vote for the Democratic Party than trying to talk Republicans into voting for us, and in doing so, turning those progressives off even more. It's a waste of time, it's self-destructive, and my fear is that this result, and even some of these conspiracy theories saying, oh, it was pointless anyway because they just stole it from us, will make those progressives who are already apathetic and already reluctant to even vote, let alone phone bank, write postcards, canvass, etc., etc. It will convince them that they were right all along and they were right to sit it out, and they will continue to sit out, and they will not participate and not help us next time. And that is really bad news for our side. So look, here's the bottom line. Losing sucks. You don't have to tell me. And I'm not for a moment trying to deny that. Losing sucks. It always sucks. Nobody wants to lose. And losing is discouraging, especially when you lose at the level we just lost to the kind of fucking people we just lost to. I get the frustration, I get the feeling of hopelessness, I get the feeling of futility, I even get the disbelief, the incredulity that I've been talking about this week. I get the emotional place where that originates, for sure. I understand where that comes from. And like I said before, I believe absolutely we should verify this result. We should call for recounts where appropriate. We should make sure that this wasn't a stolen election, just in case. However, barring some truly earth-shattering evidence to the contrary, we need to accept what actually happened, because denial doesn't help us, and denial doesn't affect anything that happened. But if that denial results in even more discouragement and disengagement and apathy among progressive voters next time, it could affect what will happen. And that's what I find truly unacceptable, and you should too.